How's it going, everybody? Sorry about the delay. We're having all kinds of crazy technical difficulties tonight, and it looks like my internet signal is not very good. I'm getting that buffering signal again, so I apologize if the stream lacks continuity. But I wanted to do this stream tonight. There we go, already buffering. Maybe a struggle, because I get this question a lot about psychedelics having the potential to precipitate episodes of mental illness and to cause psychotic breaks and this sort of thing. And the reality is that is completely and totally myth, except in the case that you were predisposed to mental illness. In such a case, then you should avoid psychedelics except under very specifically designed circumstances. Although I have to say that I have observed people that have conditions that are supposed to be completely prohibitive use psychedelics with great benefit and no adverse effects. So it's a huge let's put it this way, it's an extremely minuscule risk to any healthy person that's entering into it for the right reasons. The reality is that from the 1960s, the early 1960s, the first researchers that looked at this subject said that it was unprecedented for any compound to be able to address so many different psychological aberrations and different problems of different depositions. And so again, at Johns Hopkins University in like 2003 or so, I would imagine this researcher had probably read the quote from this earlier researcher, but he said almost the exact same thing in reference to psilocybin, that it is simply unprecedented in the history of medicine that one compound can, or that any compound can treat so many different conditions, oftentimes with a single application. So, you know, those of you that are concerned about having psychotic breaks due to, you know, use of psychedelics, that's mostly because of misinformation, propaganda from the DEA in the United States. The reality is that the researchers never told the institutions, the government institutions that commissioned them to do the research, that they should ban psychedelics and that they were dangerous. In fact, they said what I'm telling you. That first quote from that early researcher actually came from a government commissioned study, and the government responded by sending men with guns to go and shut them down when they said that we will no longer need benzodiazepines or, you know, long-term therapy. All of these different, you know, industries are completely threatened to the point of potential annihilation by these compounds, and that's why they shut it down, not because it posed a public health risk. Because it does not. And if you really consider the ultimate impact of that on society, especially if you consider how efficacious psychedelics are for oppression and addiction, which are probably the conditions that have the most you know, detrimental effect to society, sociological harm. Because, you know, you have drunk drivers, you have violence associated with alcoholism, you have murders and other sorts of violence at the hands of depressed people from time to time. And so if you could have avoided all of this, or you could have treated all of this addiction and all of this depression 40, 50 years ago, before it, you know, there would be so many less dead people, so many less jail sentences. It really is one of the greatest misjustices or misappropriations of justice in the history of justice. It's absolutely terrible. And to address specifically I did this entire live stream because of a specific comment asking about this, and the person was concerned that taking psilocybin or some other such compound would cause them some agitation or psychotic break or anxiety, because when they smoke marijuana, they have extreme anxiety. I can drink, you know, a liter of ayahuasca and play a guitar and do whatever. You know, it does not impede my clarity of mind, or, you know, but almost every time I smoke cannabis, I regret it, because it's just, you know, the mind is slowed, your capacity for it's just you're groggy and it's awful. And usually I have anxiety as well. So I think that one of the big injustices of this misappropriation or mischaracterizing of psychedelics is that they were lumped in with other drugs, including marijuana. Marijuana does contain a psychedelic called THC, but it also contains deltrahydrocannabinol. It contains what is the one that's like speed and it makes you hear things you can feel. I hate that stuff. It's in only strains from Thailand and some other places in Southeast Asia. THCV, tetrahydrocannabivarinol. It is, it's anything that contains that is more prone to cause anxiety. So what I'm saying basically is that your reaction to cannabis doesn't really indicate that you're going to have that kind of reaction with psychedelics, because it's a completely different experience. And, it may be worth considering that if you have underlying anxiety issues and you take a large dose of psilocybin, you might freak out. So this is something you have to figure out on an individual basis. Are you having anxiety that needs to be addressed before you get into a psychedelic state, because that can be a train wreck. But at the same time, just because marijuana causes anxiety does not mean that psilocybin or LSD is going to cause that same anxiety. Definitely, if you're really concerned about that, you may want to get some insight from someone before embarking on one of these experiences, just in case. But because it is important that you're in a good state of mind, and you might say, well, that sounds kind of contradictory, because if they're used for healing depression and alcoholism, how can you need to be in a good state of mind before taking them? Because the whole point is that you're not in a good place, and so you need them. That is where things get a little bit more complicated and a little bit more sticky, and why the necessity for guidance, is there. Why we do these things in groups, why we have facilitators, and why the facilitators have assistants. Because it is always possible that someone can go a bit off the deep end. The reality of that, though, is that they almost always come back. The 2CX series of psychedelics, I'm not sure what you're referring to, unless you mean Alex Shulgin's, what are they called? Like 2CB and all of those. They're interesting. I don't have a ton of experience and not really a lot of insight to offer. My experience so far with analogs is that they're just, it's so easy to get actual LSD nowadays that I don't see any reason to mess around with research chemicals. Yeah, that's it. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut it short because it's actually storming here. It's raining, and there's no way I'm going to have a good connection. I can see that we had like 20 people, and it's dropped down to 3. So I am going to try to do this again tomorrow when it's clear. Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, you can just rewind it 10 seconds, and it'll get rid of it, or people can watch it on the replay, and then all the buffering will be gone. So actually, I won't stop. I'm just trying to think if that's basically the long and short of it. It's definitely not the case that even if you were severely mentally ill, I had someone lie to me a few months ago on their intake, and they said that they did not have any major actually, this happens quite often, that people tell me they have no major traumas, and then they get here and they're like, oh, well, my mom died when I was 11, and that counts as a major trauma. The last person that did that, it was much, 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 much worse, and he decided to tell me the truth in the middle of a ceremony, which of course, all this paranoia rippled through it was a really bad thing to do. Don't ever lie to your facilitators about your issues. If they're decent people, they will try to work with you. That was really bad, and the consequences could have been horrific for both me and the individual that lied to me. But he was severely schizophrenic, and unless he was having an episode, there was no way to tell. So he seemed totally normal. I had no reason to be suspicious. I did an hour-long intake with him, and he just lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. And then about 45 minutes into the second ayahuasca ceremony, he said, I got to come clean. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia in when I was 20 years old and all this stuff. And the thing is, though, that he was totally fine, and in fact his symptoms related to schizophrenia disappeared. and as far as I know, permanently. So no more medication, no more voices in the head. And that really, that was really baffling for me, because as an ayahuasca facilitator, I am supposed to say, you are disqualified if someone says that they're schizophrenic. But after observing this particular case, it seems as if it was completely reversed. And as it turns out, LSD is being studied as a potential tool for reversing schizophrenia. But it definitely, all of these compounds definitely can precipitate mental illness, or catalyze mental illness, instigate mental illness if it's latent. So that's, the risk that you run is that if you are eventually predisposed that you're going to develop schizophrenia in your early 30s or mid 20s, which is I think when it usually kicks in, it'll happen then, the first time you take LSD. That's definitely a possibility. But the thing is that with the right trained therapist and the right guidance, even if you were to precipitate some sort of episode, it can actually neutralize future instances of these episodes. So there's a lot more research and development that needs to go into the specific techniques and the approaches that are going to be employed to address these things. But it is a very weird one to see someone's schizophrenia disappear. And it was interesting because when he drank a few nights in a row, he did get a little bit weird. He would like stare off into space more, and somebody mentioned to me, like when I say something to him, sometimes it's like all of a sudden he just checks out. So he told me that he was schizophrenic after he'd already been drinking, a few times. So I figured there's no reason to, he seems to be getting better. If anything, let's just let it ride. And that turned out to be the right thing to do, but I just backed his doses way up and made them more infrequent, so that he didn't get all spacey and strange. And by the time we were done with him, it seemed that he had been cured. So it was really remarkable, and honestly, I'm almost glad that he lied and snuck into the retreat, because it was, that's kind of what I suspected. That these well, it's not just a suspicion. I knew that LSD was being used as a treatment. But yeah, so that's it. That's the answer to that question. No, it will not cause a psychotic break. In fact, frequency of use and dosage is not relevant either. I'm not suggesting to anyone that you should take these things every single day, but there have been a couple of cases where people had crystalline LSD, which, 1 liquid ounce of LSD is enough for 100,000 strong doses. So this is a tremendous amount. As they got it confused with other stuff they had in their pocket. And in both cases, these are two completely different cases that just coincidentally both involve 5 people. So they thought it was something else, and they all did a line of LSD, and it was estimated to be about 50,000 micrograms each, between 20,000 and 50,000 micrograms each. And everyone was back to baseline within 12 to 14 hours. And they checked back in with at least the one group 5 years later, and there were no problems at all. And to the contrary, every single one of those people said it was absolutely life-changing. That was the best thing that ever happened to them. It just really scared the hell out of them, because people don't know, am I going to die? And when you can't really get a hold of your thoughts and you don't know if you've taken a lethal amount of something, it's going to be pretty scary. So that's one of the reasons, actually, that LSD is so interesting. That it's like the LD50 for a 150-pound man is like 5 gallons. It will not kill you. It's less toxic than vitamin C. So that's another good thing to have in your in the back of your mind, that if you start to think that you're going to die, you're not going to. That's one of the like irrational panics that people have a lot. Another one that I see all the time is that people become convinced that they are going to be stuck in this realm of pure consciousness for the rest of eternity. That happens really, really, really often, and unfortunately, there's nothing I can say that can prepare you for that experience, and the only thing that can be done about it is to wait it out, and hopefully you have a good facilitator that can talk you through it. But yeah, that's it. You will not have a psychotic break unless you're predisposed to mental illness. trying to catch up with the chat here. Yeah, as far as combining marijuana with psychedelics go, I don't really see why you would do that. It's kind of like blunting a knife and then trying to cut something with it. The point of psychedelics is to sharpen the mind. They enhance memories. After one psilocybin experience, researchers at Johns Hopkins University concluded that the memory of the people, this is a 5-year study, so they checked back on all these people after 5 years, and all of the effects were permanent. So everyone showed at least 50% of the improvement that they did right after the experience in memory, and their depression levels were still showing improvement after 5 years. So that was always one of the other criticisms of psychedelics. Like, sure, you take this thing and then you come back down and it's all gone. It's not true. And also now we understand that the neuroplasticity and neurogenesis that happens gives a physical basis for neurological improvement. You're literally upgrading your hardware. So, you can't run a program intended for a Commodore 64 or a modern computer on a Commodore 64. And that's exactly what psychedelics do to the brain. They upgrade the hard drive of your biocomputer so that you're able to run more sophisticated programs. It's really funny that all of this turned out to be the exact opposite of what everyone was told by the government and schools. And you would think that that's happening enough at the current juncture that people would really be taking notice and tearing down some. Well, I have to zip my mouth because I can't upset the mighty algorithm or I'll get deleted. I'm on the verge of that as it is, so we don't want that. By the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Please support the channel because we are demonetized. I cannot advertise on YouTube, and advertisers won't touch me with a... I might be able to get, a psilocybin company or something, but I have reached out to a couple of advertisers. Nobody will do it. I'm completely reliant on community support. We have a Patreon where people can access secret streams and patron premiere and patron only content. So that's one way that you can support us, and then you can support us with a one-time contribution via Zelle or PayPal. Qualified if someone says that they're schizophrenic. But after observing this particular case, why did I come to this page? Oh yeah, okay, I got it. Man, that's a bummer about the lag because we had a really good audience to start and people did not have the patience for it. I feel like there was something else, but most of the stuff of real relevance I feel like we've covered. I think it's a difficult pill for people to swallow that these compounds can be as beneficial as people like myself are saying that they are, but at this point we have mountains and mountains of research going back to the 1950s at least that support it all, and that's one of the most irksome things about all of this is that the new psychedelic renaissance, there are a lot of people acting like this has all just been discovered, and that's completely wrong. People knew this in the 1940s, even Richard Evans Schultes and Aldous Huxley, and Aleister Crowley even, he wrote about mescaline in 1890 or 1888 or something like that. Yeah, Paul Stamets used to stutter. And if you have that kind of issue, that's another thing I guess I could mention, since we've talked about the fact that you're not going to go insane from taking psychedelics. Some of the benefits, and the reason that Paul Stamets was able to cure his stutter is actually known, or at least suspected, and this is something that they've known since the 90s. Psilocybin causes this weird and often uncomfortable vibration at the base of the brain, and it really is your brain vibrating. And Dennis McKenna, who is a neurobiologist, the brother of Terence McKenna, theorized that shaking actually rattles off some crud that builds up around the brain. But for certain, it is stimulating. That vibration is coming from the part of the brain that deals with language. Yeah, the buffering's probably pretty bad. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this stuttering stream. Unfortunately, I can't give my computer mushrooms and fix it stutter. So, um, yeah, that's why I don't want to do it anymore because people keep jumping on, and if I just stop the stream, then all of the valuable content they can watch on the replay instead of never seeing any of it because of the. It's unfortunate too because I actually paid to have the internet upgraded and it didn't help at all. So, um, oh well. So, anyways, thank you guys. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in a couple days. If you haven't seen the last video I made, please check it out. It's a spoken word by Darpon with music by Kailash Kokapelli and visual art by Alex Gray and Adam Jones of Tool and other people. So it was really cool. It was really satisfying to make it because the synchronization of the words and the images happened on their own. I didn't really have to do just little micro edits here and there to make it all line up. So, and in most cases not. I just put the whole scene in and that was it. It was done. So, when that kind of thing happens, I always feel like the universal mind is constructing the piece and not me. And that's, it is do it 1,000 times and it is difficult. Do it 1,000 times 1,000 and it is easy. Do it 1,000 times 1,000 and it is no longer you that do it, but it that do it through thee. And not until then is the thing that is done well done. So, trying to convince an alcoholic friend of mine to go to your retreat. He's been to rehab too much and it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, and that's that's one of the most powerful things about psychedelics, and it's also one of the things that is the most counterintuitive, because when you tell people in AA or NA that psychedelics are 85% more effective than any other known therapy for addiction, they look at you like you're stupid. I actually got thrown out of the room for for saying this in one instance, and I'm not making that number up. There are multiple studies, and they all concluded that 85% more efficacious at treating addiction than any other treatment protocol. Yeah, Ron White is famous for having stopped drinking alcohol with ayahuasca. But that's a big number. I used LSD, one single dose of LSD to quit smoking. You just have to focus on rewiring your brain because that's how this works. Basically, your neuroplasticity is enhanced to the degree that you can rewire a habit and it's going to stick because you have hardwired that change into the brain. Yeah, it's even less toxic than vitamin C and more essential. But yeah, your alcoholic friend, in a lot of cases, all it takes is a single experience, and people. And the other interesting thing about it is that people can often, the wisdom about addicts in the past is that they have to discontinue the behavior forever. But if it turns out that if you get to the root of the trauma and you actually resolve the trauma, if you're able to fix the trauma, and this is what rewiring your brain does, right? You're actually rewiring it, so it's as if you never had the trauma. Then the addiction goes away and people become, normal. And instead of in recovery for the rest of their lives, which doesn't work. I sat through a few of those meetings, and I just listen to everybody say, if you work it, it works. And then they talk about how it's their 7th time through the program and 9th time in prison and all this crap. And it's like, so what is your definition of working exactly? And then you turn to plant medicine and it's like, it's over and you never look back. So, yeah, sure, I would say human life is just a brief vacation from the eternal realm of pure consciousness, but it's not really a vacation. It's just more like there's a reducing valve that's been placed on our sensory receiving apparatus, and psychedelics turn that filter down so we're able to receive a wider spectrum of the information that is bombarding us from the universe. But yeah, you guys, I'm tired of the buffering, and I want to practice